Good morning, good evening. Thank you for listening. This is a agricultural and horticultural show focusing on plant science, soil science, and microbiology. And the information today and on all other streams is fact-checked, so you can rely on it. And the websites and papers that are being discussed will be put in the description below. So if you're listening back, fast forward till you see some slides, because we're going to have a show today. It's probably going to be on organic manures. It's up to week 8 in that soil science, soil fertility and fertilizers university course. That's probably what will be happening unless someone speeds in with their questions or with their discussion topics. So I'll give it another minute. Wait for some cool folk to arrive, more cool folk, like Genetic Memory Farms. G'day, g'day. He says, good evening, Aussie. Been a while. I hope you're well. Aussie Jeffro. Good morning, everybody. Cheers. Cheers to you too. I get really excited with the organic shows because that's what my focus of interest is. And it's pretty hard. It's a very broad topic, so any information, reliable information regarding organics is always appreciated by myself anyway. So that's what I'm going to go through in 15 seconds. Now it's only 5 seconds. Didn't that go quick? Right, there's been no questions or topics, so I'm going to get into it. I like this going through the courses because I'm just sharing on what I've been taught. So we're sharing already, good. So this is the course that it is. Been through all these, and we're up to this one, week 8. Very exciting. So, actually, can I make the screen bigger? I would rewatch this back. Oh, okay. Dead set. Is that blue and... Oh. I wonder what that was relating to. Anyway, I'll go back to that at the end. I want to see if I can somehow make it bigger. Oh, yeah. Does that work? Oh gosh, how trippy is that? Look at that, it's cool as. So I want to make this one into, there it is, that button. There we go. I hope that's coming through larger now, instead of all of the perimeters and border things. All right, organics and manures. So components of sustainable agriculture. This starts by saying, what are the components of sustainable agriculture? Intercropping, crop rotation, manuring, bioagents, conservation tillage, green manuring, and agroforestry. So there's a few things. Crop rotation is pretty important. I'm not going to actually elaborate on more. Let's just go through the slides. So the classification of manures, because that's what today's is. Bulky organic manures, and there's concentrated. So the bulky organic manures are mainly derived from animal, plant, and other organic wastes and green plant tissues. And the concentrated ones are the ones that have already been derived, like the cakes and the meals, like oil cakes, blood meal, meat meal, bone meal, those types of things. Neem cake, things that have been concentrated. And it goes down further again, which I'm not going to discuss because we'll get into it pretty good later on, about all these other different legumes and all the beneficial ones that you can really use to provide nutrients organically to your substrates. So bulky organic manures are those of plant material or animal origin, which when added to the soil in bulk amounts tend to decrease bulk density, which is a compactness, and increase the soil volume, thus providing better physical conditions for plant growth especially in coarse textured soils, and also provided essential nutrients in smaller quantities than chemical fertilizers. The characteristics of bulky organic manure. Organic material are relatively poorer in concentration of plant nutrients. These materials possess a wider carbon to nitrogen ratio and carbon to sulfur ratio and supply energy needed for microbes. Because that's the whole thing about organics, is the microbes. So how are you going to feed the microbes for them to break down the elements to provide it to your soil and to your substrate, to your plants, to substrate and plants. So other characteristics of bulky organic manures are the mineral nutrients in the organic material become available to plants after mineralization, because they're already bound up in the organic material. So once they're broke down, they become mineralized. A judicious combination of organic manures is essential to maintain fertility status, like farmyard manure, compost, green manure. And green manure is like any plant material that's green, and it's still got a lot of nitrogen in it. So you want to get that and you bury it, or you put it underneath, like in the compost, so it will not volatilize off and go back into the atmosphere. Other examples of organic manures: biogas, slurry, sewage or sludge, molasses and vermicompost. Be careful with sewage and sludge, because you've got to know where it comes from, because it's, I don't want to actually elaborate, you just got to know where it's come from, because you'll know what's inside of it. So farmyard manure, example here is cattle manure. So definition: the physical composition of cattle manure is called farmyard manure, which consists of dung and urine of cattle and the litter. The bedding material, like hay, straw, which is used for the cattle. Cattle manure is slow acting, bulky and low analyzed fertilizer. It's got a low NPK rating. All of it's under 1 on the NPK. And it's obtained from dung and urine of farm animals mixed with litter and other miscellaneous farm waste. I'll go through NPK ratings of different organic manures later on. Here it is. Well, here's the cattle. Look at that, the NPK, 0.5, 0.2, 0.5. Isn't that a spin out? But with urine, which is wasted, contains 1% nitrogen and 1.5% potassium. So nitrogen present in urine is mostly in the form of urea, which is subject to volatilization. That's why you've got to put it underneath or inside of it, so it won't get volatilized off into the air. And even during storage, nutrients are lost due to leaching and volatilization. So you've got to be careful of when you store it. However, it is practically impossible to avoid losses altogether, but it can be reduced by the following method. So you trench a long sausage-shaped trench. That's the measurements there. And that's really about it, because it's got to be long and sausage. It can't be more than 2 feet thick or 60 centimeters, because that's where you might get anaerobic pockets if you don't turn it. Depends what method you use to how you're going to process your manures. And all available litter and refuse is mixed with soil and spread in the shed so that it is to absorb urine. So that's just saying, if you want to get more urine, which has the N and K of the 1:1, so it's very high, like 1's pretty good. As you can see, it's twice as much as original cattle manure. So if you want to get that, that's how you collect it. Because they're thinking, how can you get the pee from cattle? Well, that's how you do it. You spread the litter and refuse across their areas where they hang around a lot. Then you can rake it up. So the next morning, the urine is soaked, and the dung can be collected and placed in the trench. A section of the trench for one end should be taken up for filling with daily collection. When the section is filled to the height of 45 to 60 centimeters, notice how it doesn't go above 2 feet or 60 centimeters, the top of the heap should be made into a dome and plastered with cow dung. So you get a little bit of cow dung and you mix it with water and make it into a slurry, and that slurry is going to paste the top, and that's going to limit the volatilization of the nitrogen, for instance. The process is continued, and when the first trench is completely filled, second trench is prepared. This should take about, I'll see if it, oh, there it goes. I was just going to say the duration. Farmyard manure becomes ready to use in about 4 to 5 months after plastering it shut. If urine's not collected in the bedding, it can be collected along with the washings of the cattle shed in a cemented pit from which it can be later used. Partially rotten farmyard manure has to be applied 3 to 4 weeks before sowing, while well-rotted manure can be immediately applied. The reason for that is because it's got a lot of nutrients still, and it hasn't had a chance to process and neutralise so that it's not going to overwhelm and create a saline effect. Generally, 10 to 20 hectares is applied. Okay, next slide. That's how to apply it. But for vegetable crops like potato, tomato, etc., they respond well to farmyard manure. The other responsive crop is sugarcane and other orchard crops. The entire amount of nutrients present in farmyard manure is not available immediately because it's immobilized. It has to be broken down first. About 30% of nitrogen and 60 to 70% of the phosphorus and potassium are available to the first crop after it's been broken down using microbes mostly. Next one, compost. We should see if there's any questions. I'll just stop while we're on the compost bit. No questions, that's very good. This is so beneficial. This is a way to forever make your grounds and substrates fertile. By having the organic practices, it gets easier as the time goes on because you're not utilising, when you put up the roots in a pot, it doesn't utilise the whole space. And the microbes in there, they can only travel, a full stop on a piece of paper is the lifespan of a microbe. That's how far it can travel. So it needs to be vectored round, like on earthworms or other things. And then the minerals can be broken down. The immobilized minerals can be mineralized. So therefore, after you've grown something, there's quite a lot of area that hasn't been used. So that's why organics builds it over the years and years, and it gets easier as the time goes on. So compost is a process of converting organic matter into manure in a short time by accelerating the fermentation process under controlled conditions. There's plenty of ways. There's 10 different methods here of composting. There's the indoor, I-N-D-O-R-E. I think that's the one I mostly use. It's a 3-month process. There's also, I don't know the name of the other one I do, but and you don't have to turn it. You just leave it. Activated compost process, maybe that one. So this is going to go through all the different methods of composting, and there's 10 here, so I'm not really going to go through the whole methods. And if you're interested in these different methods, pause the slides. I'll touch on indoor, I-N-D-O-R-E, and either Bangalore or Coimbatore process. And I'll skim through the others. I'll still stop on them though. So the Coimbatore, how can I? It's left undisturbed for 8 to 10 weeks. Do you want me to really go through all of these? There's 10 of them here. I suppose it is organic manures. So a layer of waste material is first laid in a pit. It is moistened. Actually, I'm not going to read all this. That's not even a method I do. This method. Organic waste is spread, the indoor method. So organic waste is spread in the cattle shed to serve as a bedding. The urine is soaked it up and removed every day to form the layer. The urine soaked earth scraped from cattle shed and sprinkled over twice a day. Old compost acts as an inoculum for decomposting the material. The heap is left undisturbed for about a month and then thoroughly moistened to give a turning. The compost is ready for application in another month. So this is the one where it's ready in, well, 3 months. So it's just a really good method. It's The long sausage method. So you just got to put all your things you want to be composted down on the ground, and well, you don't have to cover it. I have covered it in the past. Actually, we'll just go through the things first, and then we'll get into methods. So the Bangalore methods: dry waste material of 25 centimeters or a foot thick, and it's spread in the pit. And a thick suspension of cow dung is in water is sprinkled over for moistening. A thin layer of dry waste is laid over the moistened layer. The pit's filled with dry leaves until it's 0.5 metre or 2 foot off the ground. It's left exposed without covering for 15 days and is given a turning, plastered with wet mud, and left undisturbed for about 5 months or till required. So you can kind of do your math. I'm thinking, all right, do I need any more compost this season? I've got a few more months to grow in my growing season. So no, I've already good. All right, well, how about getting some ready for next season? So this is when you might want to change your method to, for instance, like the Bangalore method, which takes 5 months, or you can leave it a smidge longer. The Nardeep, see, you need a container for that. It's for continuously processing. I like the ones that are just out in the ground, because you leave these heaps. There's no sample pictures. You leave them out in the ground where they also aid to, like, this position that you put it would be a position where you're going to put future crops, or maybe set up a permanent compost heap. This Nardeep method's worth reading back later on for you guys, because it's about layering, and you put a second and a third layer, and that's just does different things. So it's when I do my indoor method, the long sausage roll, I will still layer it with cattle dung, then green manure, cattle dung, green manure, cattle dung, and then seal it off. And then after you take it off, it's just black. It just looks so nice after you process it. Righto, so now we're into compost advantages. Actually, I'll just stop and see if there's any questions on that. Long sausage, says GMF. Sorry, I am hungry. Being shoveling snow. Oh, snow. I love snow. I miss it so much. Oh, it can be hard though, especially if there's a fair bit with a wide shovel that you use. And if it's that wet snow, if it's not the soft snow like up in the north. The snow has it's a 1 to 10. Oh, anyway, I just love the snow. But yeah, the sausage shape, it's just good to remember. It just looks like a half sausage cut in half lengthways, and then you put it on the ground. That's what it looks like. So a speed bump, but you're going to make it no higher than 2 feet. And depends what season you're going through, you can cover it. I've covered it in the past as well. What conditions? You can notice too, I did a video a while ago on how to see if your compost has been activated. That's pretty interesting. Compost advantages. Compost advantages. Well, it reduces waste. The composting temperature kills pathogens, weeds, and seeds. And that's extremely important. So if you get compost from somewhere else or someone and it grows seeds out of it, they haven't let it go into the thermophilic stage. You must let it go into that range to do this. It's above 70 Celsius. What's that? I don't know. GMF, help me. 160 or something Fahrenheit. So you've got to let it go into that for a period of, say, at least a week. So that's where, if it's not getting too hot for you, you might want to cover it just to get the temperature up. But it's extremely important. Or just know that don't put seeds in. If you're going to come through a season that's going to be particularly cold, or maybe your compost heap, you might have one with seeds and one without seeds. So you might want to let the seed one go for an extra month, or wait till summertime. That's got to process the heap, just for this reason. This is extremely important. Out of nearly everything, this is second to the carbon to nitrogen ratio of getting the mixes right. So I'll go on with compost advantages. Point 4, matured compost comes in equilibrium with the soil. 5, during composting, number of wastes from several sources are blended together. It's an excellent soil conditioner. It's a sellable product, improves manure handling, reduces the risk of pollution, pathogens are reduced, and it's additional revenue. And the soil or your substrate bloody loves it. It just, because remember, inevitably you're feeding the microbes. So by you putting this compost heap and getting it processed properly and at the right moisture level, the microbes will always be retained and not in a spore form. So it'll just be thriving with goodness. And quite a lot of microbes put out phytohormones, which is brilliant for the plants. Don't get me started on that. Right, so maybe some more advantages. Compost also suppresses plant disease and pests. That's because of the varying microbes that you got into it. Like there might be Pseudomonas fluorescens, which is terrific for diseases. There might be Bacillus thuringiensis, which is great for pests. So by multiplying your numbers in your compost heap and reusing your green manures that you previously used that you know had fertilizers and biopesticides in them, it's going to multiply them. So that's why it gets better as time goes on. Other advantages of compost: it reduces or eliminates the need for chemical fertilizers. You don't need chemical or mineral fertilizers. You dead set don't. Keep them for possible foliar rectifications of compost advantages. Promote high yields because I'll keep going on. They facilitate reforestation, wetlands, and help with other areas that have been contaminated. It's cost effective, remediate to soils, remove solids, oils, get grease and heavy metals from stormwater runoff. Compost also captures and destroys 99.6% of industrial volatile organic compounds. That's pretty full on, isn't it? And it'll process that. So if you're in an industrial estate or industrial area, that's probably very beneficial for you because it just pulls it out of the air and helps it process it. Last advantage is it provides cost savings. And it's fantastic for the environment, which is the whole reason we're going to do this. What's the disadvantage of compost? Well, the product's blooming heavy and it's bulky, making it expensive to transport to. So you don't want to buy it. That's why you want to make it on site. Grow your grass. Grass is a perfect carbon and nitrogen ratio. So there's a compost heap you can start nearly for free just by putting your grass clippings in a pile and adding to that when you cook, blah, blah, add to it inside of it. When you put green nitrogen, you'll add to it inside of it because remember it volatiles off. Other compost disadvantages. The nutrient value of compost is low compared to that of chemical fertilizers, and the rate of nutrient release is slow, so that it cannot usually meet the nutrient requirements of crops in short times, thus resulting in some nutrient deficiency. So that's why you want to get built up in the soil or substrate and keep it there and practice the conservation tillage or no-till. And, well, conservation tillage is between 0 and 10%, so that's virtually a no-till. So you want to practice conservation, that's what I do, is only just alter the A layer and the O layer horizon of the soil. Anyway, the last disadvantage of the compost disadvantages is the nutrient composition of compost is highly variable compared to the chemical fertilizers. Highly variable. So it's going to give the plant what it needs, and you'll find your ORAC, organic rating, and your other secondary metabolite profiles will excel for this reason. Another compost disadvantage. Agricultural users might have concerns regarding potential levels of heavy metals and other possible contaminants in compost, particularly mixable municipal solid wastes. So if you source it from somewhere, you're going to know where you're getting it from, mate, because fair income, it can have all this stuff in it. Because they consider, like a big construction site, they might go through first and go and get rid of all the trees, scrape all the topsoil, and consider that sellable compost. That's just one example. So there's all fuels and oils in it. Another disadvantage is long-term and heavy application of compost to agricultural soils have been found to result in salt, nutrient, or heavy metal accumulation and may adversely affect plant growth, the soil microbes, water quality, and animal and human health. That's because they've got it from a bad source. That's it. If you've composted it properly, and well, you don't go and put it down in 2 feet layers and expect it to work for you. Oh, rad. Shane, you can't. Oh, there's 2 big eagles sitting in a tree just in front of me. It looks pretty cool. They caught my eye. They're that big. They're dropping out organic manures at the moment. Did you know that the birds, they don't have pee? They have they combine it together. So it's uric acid is the urine that's with the mixed in with its poop. Isn't that interesting? What good timing. Green manure. What's blooming green manure? Well, it can be defined as the growth of a crop for a specific purpose of incorporating it into the soil or substrate while green or soon after maturity to improve the soil and benefit subsequent crops. Ploughing or turning of undecomposed green plant tissue into the soil can improve the soil's physical condition and fertility because it's got a lot of nitrogen, and nitrogen is a major nutrient element required for microbes. So that's going to just help everything. Objectives of green manuring. It's a fantastic process. Like really, truly, if you're not practicing green manure, really take note because it's free and it's bound up with all the elements that are required. It's really, really good because you know that I won't go on. This is going to go on for hours. This talk. In objectives of green manuring: increasing organic matter content in the soil, maintain and improve soil structure, reduce the loss of nutrients, particularly nitrogen, provide a source of nitrogen for the following crop. See that? Following. So you don't have to even add anything because you've already done it this round and you know the next round's going to be fine because you've green manured efficiently. I'll talk about the green manures later on. I've got a rad one because I've delved right into this topic. And the last point of the objectives of green manuring, oh, look at it. It's just flying right there. Sorry, you just can't see. It's just circling the paddock right in front of me. Looks rad. Another one sitting in the tree. Show us, you say, show us. I wish I could turn the camera around. The last objectives of green manuring is to reduce the soil loss by erosion. Classification of green manure in the situation is green manure crops are grown and buried in the same field that they were grown in, either as a pure crop or as an intercrop with the main crop. The most common green manures is this magical one here, Crotalaria juncea, or commonly known as sun hemp. It's from a legume family. This is magical. Should I go into that now? All right, where's my little paper that I've got on here? For instance, where's that? There it is there. Okay, so for garlic, there is a need of 60 to 80 kilos per hectare of nitrogen. So most people just go and buy urea and put that amount in, and you can do a calculation to see how much you need per hectare or per size. But sun hemp puts out 134 kilos per hectare if grown to its maturity after 60 days. So what's that saying is you get a field, plow it, put sun hemp down, after 60 days, actually age 50, after 50 days it's reached its nitrogen potential and its height is 1.8 meters or 6 feet, and then you till it in. And that's going to provide, if I just do that one time only, that'll provide twice the nitrogen amount needed for a garlic crop, for its whole crop, just by doing that once. and it grows every 60 to 50 days. So I can get in at least 3, probably 4 or 5 tills per season, because you've got to know the long day and the short day of the plants. You can't just go and put it in. So there you go. If you're going to pick up anything from this whole of today's topic, it's this one here. Source yourself some of them. I'm not going to go on it because it's a bit of a secret for me. Actually, while we're on it, the NPK of the Crotalaria juncea is 2.3, 0.5, 1.8. I'll say that again. Of the dry matter of the NPK is 2.3, 0.5, 1.8. Go and look at some fertilizer packets that you buy at the store. They're similar. But you can grow this in 50 days, under 2 months, in the right conditions. And it looks really good. There's the chances of like other birds and things eating it are low because it grows so fast. You might just have a watering issue because it grows very tall. Any questions on that? Because that's probably one of the most important things from the whole. GMF says, so are we always guessing or trying to calculate seed carbon to nitrogen values, or is there an easy way to actually measure it at home? Yes, there's an easy way to measure it at home, mate. I'll give you the chart a bit later on. But I was just making the grass, green grass is the perfect one. Alfalfa is perfect, so you just have to grow it and chop it and do nothing. Where the other ones, you've got to add to it and things like that, just to make the ratio right. Righto, back to it. There you go. You got one little hint from me. Now, green leaf manuring refers to turning green leaves into tender twigs collected from shrubs or trees or nearby from anywhere. And you can use there's some ones suggested here that are a lot better for green manuring, like the azolas or the cassias. So if you were interested in doing this, I would go and source some of these 5 species, because they put out good amounts of green leaf manure in a fast time. There's a picture of a green manure cover crop. So see, they've just gone and grown. It kind of looks a little bit like sun hemp, but because they've got big heart-shaped leaves. But sun hemp has taller stalks. It's of the legume family, so it works quite well. So you can inoculate, being a legume, you do want the rhizobium microbe, because that's the microbe that forms the root nodules underneath it. So green leaf manure crops. Here's some more examples from those 5 that were there earlier. So I'm not going to read them out because they're the botanical names. But if you're interested in the green leaf manure crops, do your research on these ones. And look at this one down here. As a director, this is one that you should have anyway, because that's the neem tree. And the neem meal NPK is so high. So if you get the neem tree, you grow it, and then you'll go and grab the leaves and you'll squash them to get the as a director out, which is the neem oil. And then afterwards, what's left when you squashed them, cold pressed them, whatever you want to do to remove the as a director, the leftover is called the cake or the meal. And that has an NPK of 5, is 1.5 to 2. That's 5. Remember, cattle manure has 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. But if you get this one green leaf manure and get the meal out of it, squeeze it, get the cake, 5, 1.5, 2. So that's at least, what's that? Minimum's 400% better than cow manure. And you can grow this on your own property if you have property. Here you go. Some nutrient content of some green manures. So here's that Crotalaria juncea, the sun hemp, 2.3, 0.5, 1.8. And here's some other ones that don't grow as fast, and that's why my one is the first one. see that too, the nutrient content percentage is on the air dry basis. So this is what happens once you get all the leaves and you dry it out. That's what would be retained, or you'd expect to be retained. So you can calculate off those numbers, which I do. Here's the biomass production and the nitrogen accumulation of some of the crops. So the age, 60 days, see, you're supposed to do it. But look at the nitrogen accumulated. 134 kilos per hectare of nitrogen after 60 days, 2 months. That's just so much. And the dry matter is very important too, because that puts in the organic matter, concentrated organic matters, which leads on to this. Concentrated organic manures have higher nitrogen content than bulky organic manures. The important concentrated organic manures are the cakes, meals, fish manure, also known as organic nitrogen fertilizer. For their use, they are converted through bacterial action into readily usable ammonial nitrogen and nitrate nitrogen. Through nitrosomes and nitrobacter, that happens. And these organic fertilizers are therefore relatively slow acting, but they supply available nitrogen for a more extended period. So you to just include some of them, or just use Splimmin. Well, you can do whatever you want. These are the options for all the different types. So it depends on what situation you've got. You can do whatever type you like. If you don't have any room, if you're in an apartment, you might want to go with growing an outdoor green manure crop. You might have to go with something more concentrated like these. After oil is extracted from oil seeds, the remaining solid portion is dried, which can be used as manure, and that's called oil cakes. There's two types: non-edible, you can't give to your livestock, and edible, you can. So the different types. And actually, groundnut cake has an NPK of 7.3, 7.3, 1.5, 1.3, 7.3 for groundnut cake. It's hard to find that in mineralized fertilizers. Well, actually, I guess go on. Both edible and non-edible oil cakes can be used as manures. However, edible oil cakes are fed to cattle, and non-edible oil cakes are used for manures, especially in horticultural crops. Nutrients present in oil cakes after mineralization are made available to crops 7 to 10 days after application, because that's about the time that it's going to start for immobilization. So the microbes will go in, they'll start doing their process, and by that time, there will be trace amounts of elements become made available to the plants. Oil cakes need to be well powdered before application for even distribution and quicker decomposition. Hang on, well powdered? I don't know what that means. Next, groundnut cake is on the left. You can see it's already dried. Oh, well powdered. So in other words, you'd have to crush it up. Yeah, you don't want to go. If you put that in there, do you know that slow release, we're going to go through that, I think, week 11, but slow release fertilizer is only to do with one thing. Actually, it's not one thing. It's mainly one thing, the size of it. So if you want to make this as an NPK of 7 to 1 to 1, you might think, well, I'm going to powder half of it, and then the other half I'm going to leave as the right size, because what's that going to do is that's going to slowly break down, and then it's going to become made available. So your powdered stuff might be available in 7 to 10 days, but your last stuff left whole might be available in 1 to 2 months' time. That's how you can use the different. There's mustard cake. Average nutrients of oil cakes. There's heaps here. So it's what you can get, what's in your area or what's available to you. Then you can come back to this chart and see what the NPK is and put that into your maths. So you know what summary you're getting for your outcome, desired outcome that you'd like. So I don't have to go through, there's quite a lot here, probably 15. So if you're into oil cakes, you can come back and look at this slide here. Decorated and undecorated. Undecorated. Decorated. Don't know what that means, to be honest. Other concentrated or organic manures. Blood meal. So when it's dried and powdered, it can be used as manure. The meat of dead animals is dried and converted into meat meal, which is, believe it or not, a good nitrogen source. Here's some concentrated organic manure pictures. So it's got hoof or horn meal on the left, bone meal in the middle, and crushed bone meal on the right. All good for the different reasons. Now, what's the blooming NPK then, though? There's no point in having them. So this chart tells you that. So it's the average nutrient content of the animal-based concentrated organic manures. So you can see blood meal is very high, like meat meal, and hoof and horn meal is also very high in nitrogen. And then in your phosphorus, you got very high in your raw bone meal and your steam bone meal. So in your bones has all of that. Oh, there's the eagle in there. Very distractive. It's massive. It's a wedge-tailed eagle. It's not an American bald. So soil beneficial microbes as a link to sustainable agriculture. Oh, geez, here we go. This is my topic of interest. So there's bioremediation, nitrogen fixing, phosphorus solubilization, biopesticides or bioherbicides, organic matter decomposition, ones that put out cellulase, suppress biotic and abiotic stresses, ones that help with that, humulus. So biofertilizers, mate, this is everything. I'll have examples later on. I'm excited just to read this because they work. They blimmin' work really well, not just a bit. They work really well. I've been using them for a few years now, and I've seen amazing results. So biofertilizer preparation are preparations containing living cells or latent cells of efficient strains of microbes that help crop plants efficiently uptake nutrients by their interactions in the rhizosphere when applied through seed or in the soil. They can also be applied foliar. Some might help through foliar as well. They accelerate certain, but when it's foliar, the microbes like the moisture, so that's why they're more so in the rhizosphere, because they've got to be above, 65% is for fungus, and the bacteria is it's about 85 to 90%, pretty wet. So biofertilizers accelerate certain microbial processes in the soil or substrate, which augment the extent of availability of nutrients in a form easily assimilated to the plants. Here's a bit of a flow chart on the biofertilizers. So you can get different types of your nitrogen ones, which are symbiotic or non-symbiotic. So are they good for legumes or are they good for any plants? Go through that later. The phosphorus ones, they can either solubilize or mobilize it, and the organic matter. So has it got cellulose or lignin? Cellulase or ligninase enzymes in the material for it to break down the organic matter. And the categories of microbes used as biofertilizers. This is so rad. Here we go. Nitrogen. So you got symbiotic or non-symbiotic. So rhizobium is a symbiotic one. So that's the one you put with the legumes, like we were talking about earlier. So you go and source your inoculated red clover, because red clover has more fixing capacity than white clover. So source that, and then you've got your blue seeds that have been inoculated. So in other words, you've got one seed sample with rhizobium, and then you mix it with your other legumes. Therefore, it'll multiply once it gets into its favorable environment. That's how you disperse that at a cheap rate. And the non-symbiotic ones are Azotobacter and Azospirillum. There's a few more too. Should I give away all the secrets? I'm using about 5. You can actually, did you know that, is it Azospirillum crucoccum is that's the one I use, and that can supply I'll go on the lower range. 70%, it's about 80. So 80% of a sugar cane's full growth cycle of nitrogen. So if you get that one microbe and inoculate sugarcane, you don't have to give it nitrogen, or you only have to supply 20% at the most. So you can go and use another microbe, which will do that, and therefore, bang, you never have to use nitrogen for your sugarcane crop, as an example. Next one on the list is the phosphate solubilizing microbes, because see, all these are NPK, calmate, sulfur, and then they will all work for you if you get the right ones. But you've got to get the right ones, and then you've got to make sure they're activated. So this is a bit of a, not a trick, but yeah, it's not as simple as it sounds, but if you get things cycling, it'll continue cycling. So the second phosphate solubilizing microbe, Bacillus, Pseudomonas, Aspergillium, and Micrococcus. So there's numerous ones of them that are good for phosphate solubilization. That's the genus too, not the species. They're the genuses. Zinc solubilizing microbes, Thiobacillus or Bacillus areabahatul. I don't use that one. Potassium solubilizing microbes might be Acetobacillus or Burkholderia, which can actually do a bit of nitrogen as well, or some Pseudomonas ones. Sulfur oxidizing microbes, Xanthobacter, Allicin, and some Bacillus ones. Biocontrol is very important. So which ones are going to help you against problems like Subtilis, Pseudomonas aureofaciens, Pseudomonas fluorescens, talked about earlier. That one's rad. Pythium, other Umycetes, it just works. Agrobacterium radiobacter. And the last one is the phosphate mobilizing microbes. So they're the fungi. So mycorrhizal fungi like Glomus interradius, Glomus desiticola, Glomus mosaici. What's the other one that got changed? Glomus. There's some references if you want. But microbes. This is my topic. Please ask questions and please put this into your feed pack. So for your all sorts of crops, it'll work with this. This is any crop. This isn't like the only one is a symbiotic rhizobium for legumes. But besides that, pretty much all of these will work in the right situations. They're just brilliant, brilliant. Then you've got to get the right colony forming units, because if you notice that there's one in Australia called root something, and they don't have any colony forming units or CFUs in the front. In other words, it's so low, they don't put it on the front. In other words, you've got to use high amounts of it. So it's the colony forming units is a must when you're purchasing your microbes. How do I decide what fertilizer to use? Says this slide. Well, it's the climate, and then you need your manures, the water, soil, and crop residues. So how do I feed the plant? Crop needs for nutrients. So you bring in inorganic fertilizers, NPKs, which I don't support at all. It's too easy because you're going to need herbicides, pesticides, all that sort of other stuff, which doesn't help sustainability. This organic way is sustainable. So what's this sort of say? All right, decomposition of farmyard manure, anaerobic, foul smell, putrefaction. Aerobic, it starts to decay because it's got carbon dioxide and water with it. So when it decays, the urine contains urea, which subsequently breaks down to ammonia and liberates into the air. That's the reason why you've got to put it in, pack it in something, or seal it off on the top if you're putting your compost heaps. That's for nitrosomus, volatiles of that off. What's this say? Competition of nutrient. I should stop it actually, see if there's any questions. No, not just the carbon to nitrogen ratio still. All right, I think we're coming to that. And if we're not going to come to that, I'll answer that at the end. Like if the slides don't allow it, or don't allow it, if the slides don't have it, I'll cover that at the end. Because this course has that, goes into great detail about carbon to nitrogen ratio, but I don't know if this week's lectures has it. So what's this say? Competition of nutrients released from mineralization processes of soil organic matter. Because remember, the mineralized nutrients are immobilized in the organic matter. So once they're broken down by microbes, they're ready to be uptaked. Okay. The reactions of organic manures in the soils and substrates, protein and lipid compounds undergo mineralization in 3 steps: aminization, ammonification, and nitrification. Actually, I'm not going to go through them. So there's different, by enzymatic hydrolysis, it all happens. Nitrification is done with nitrosomes, as you can see. And to convert it back, you use nitrobacter. There you go. So ammonium may be absorbed directly by plants, and ammonium may be fixed by lattice by expanding types of clay material. Okay. Factors affecting decomposition of farmyard manure: temperature, moisture, and constituents. So temperature will increase in temperature. With the increase in temperature, decomposition becomes faster. Hence, the higher the decomposition rate, the higher the loss of nutrients like nitrogen. Compactness of the heap. In an open and light heap, aerobic organisms take part in the decomposition of manure. In a compact heap, the fermentation is slow, but the regular, mainly due to an anaerobic organisms, which should prefer aerobic decomposition. And the bad thing about that is if you're going to do that, because once the nitrogen's broken down, it's broken into nitrate, for instance. Nitrate has 3 oxygen molecules on it, and which is very favorable for aerobic microbes. So if it's too compact, they're going to use your nitrate that you've broken down. Next one, moisture. Some amount of moisture is needed to hasten the microbial decomposition. If the moisture level is too high, it'll retard it. If it's too low, it'll just stop, because they need between, well, 80%, what's it, 60 to 80%. I remember seeing that is the correct moisture level for processing of organic compost. Constituents. The decomposition of manure depends on the presence of the soluble nitrogenous matter in the manure. If urine consists in higher amounts, the decomposition will be rapid because the microbes can assimilate the nitrogen and use it. Possible nutrient losses from manure between excretion of the crop uptake. So it can be handling and storing. So handling, the liquid portion is urine and the solid portion is the cow dung. And the storage can be leaching or volatilization. So that's why you must store it properly in the sealed off. Don't allow this nitrogen, don't allow nitrosomes to do its function. Retain your nitrogen. Losses during handling. Size proportion. I'm trying to summarize it. Urine contains NPK in large portions. However, our country has no good methods of preserving urine. In our country, most of the cattle sheds have no cemented floors, and the urine gets soaked into the soils of the cattle shed. And the larger quantities of urine are therefore lost through formation of gaseous ammonia and nitrosomes multiplying. So see, you don't have to do that if this is just one way. So for instance, in India, where I get taught this university stuff, they are very favorable for green manures that have high amounts of N in it, like your groundnut cake with a 7.5, or your what's another high one? Neem meal is 5. So things like that. What else is on this list? Goat manure is 1.35. Chicken poo is 5. So there you go. So you can grow it, or chicken poo. Same equivalent. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Losses during preparation and storage. Well, I don't have to elaborate on leaching or volatilization. You can read that if you'd like. And I'm not going to. Leaching's when it runs off, and volatilization's what I talked about. Enough about that. How to improve the composition of farmyard manure? Well, better handling. So storage in a pit. You could use biogas, plant, or use chemical preservatives. Definitely not chemical preservatives. Just for the sake of what it is, just you put out a bit more, or improve your sealing off layer in your when you're making your heaps. Trench method, or actually don't even worry about. Incorporate your green manures. Don't just use only farmyard manure. Use of chemical preservatives, not interested. Superphosphate's a chemical preservative. Since farmyard manure gets dry due to high temperature, under tropical conditions, the use of chemical fertilizers can be safely recommended. No, I don't recommend it. You've got to put a bloody hose out. Effect of organic matter on soil properties. Well, it improves the soil physical properties, soil structure, soil water holding capacity. That's amazing. The water just goes like it just swells. Soil aeration, soil loss through erosion. The improvements of chemical properties from organic matter in the soil. It supplies essential plant nutrients on a balanced ratio. It slowly releases the nutrients, and it has high residual value. And the improvements of biological activity is it stimulates them, allows them to function and provide multiple growth and multiple cycling. So all the good ones the NPKs are going to be taken care of. Nutrient deficiency in Indian soils? No. Declining fertilizer response overall. Well, this is just, you can see from, because the big man come in and told people, you should be using buy NPK from the store. It's way better. Rapid growth. Too easy. Blah, blah. Then buy pesticides. Then buy herbicides. Who cares about the substrates? Well, they're wrong. Just like tobacco was wrong, how they had those scientists lie under oath. It's wrong. It's not sustainable. And now finally the world's picking up on it, and now they don't know what to do about it. Well, it's just organics. That's the future. This shows the progressive chart on it, so you can see how its fertilizer consumption of NPKs has gone up, and then the organics has slowly gone down, and it's going to go up, and that's why the soils are becoming polluted and not usable. Balanced fertilization. No, I only support chemical fertilizers for foliar deficiency rectifications. So I'm not going to read this. A lot of people call that what do I call it? Sin organics or some weird word. I don't support it. It's either organic or it's not. So in my eyes, if you go and supplement with substrate feeds with chemical fertilizers sometimes, well, it's not organics. In my eyes. Classification of fertilizers: straight, complex, and mixed. Okay. I think we finished today, because this goes into I'll just tell you what they are, why. Straight is one only type. Complex has multiple, one or two types, and mixed might have 3 or 4 types of chemical fertilizers. That's why I'm not really going to discuss this. Fertilizer grade, ratios. See, they even put fillers in. It's adulterants which they put in the substrates just to make the weight go higher, like sand, soil, coal powder, etc. So just stick with organics that you know the source is coming from, so there has no filler as well. Soil conditioners. These low-grade organic materials like peat, soil, paddy husk, groundnut hull are added to fertilizer mixes during the preparation to reduce hydroscopy and improve the soil physical conditions. So neutralizing down the bottom of residual acidity, these materials like dolomite and limestone are added to mixes to the counterpart to help the acidity of the nitrogenous fertilizers. Well, you add that to rectify the pH. So limestone is 96% calcium carbonate, and dolomite has magnesium in it. So I think it's only 70% calcium carbonate and magnesium carbonate of about 20%. So yeah, they are good. They are mined, so they're not produced. Classification of fertilizers according to their physical form, suspension, mineralized, liquid, clear, liquid, and solid. All right. I'm not going to go into this. As you can see, it's processed. It's not organics. Suspension fertilizers, mixing of liquids. Foliar spray. It refers to the spraying of fertilization solution on foliage of growing plants in low concentrations, very, very low, 100 ppm concentrations. It's the only time I support it. It just works. It works, that's all. Disadvantages, marginal leaf burn, that's only for salinity. Only a small quantity of nutrients can be supplied at a time. Several applications are needed. No, not going to go. I'm interested in organic fertilizers, not mineralized. Chemical fertilizers, 3. Mixed. What's that? Oh, it's a callus. Look at the callus. That's a potato with callus growing on it. So they're all undifferentiated cells, haven't been given a direction yet to know if they're going to be roots or shoots. They're just sitting there. You know, that's in the tissue culture, that should be. Oh, look, see, they've got more cytokines than oxygen to produce the shoots. Actually, let's get back to topic. Advantages of mixed fertilizer mixtures. No. Organics I support. Read this if you're into synthetics. Let's try and read. Types of fertilizers produced in India. You can see how high the nitrogen, for instance, content is. Just ridiculously high, but they're all open to volatilization. It doesn't help with sustainability, it pollutes. Leaching, various types of blendeds. Okay, no. Organics I'm interested in. Manufacturing processes, no. This is how to make it. No, don't want to know how to make urea. Or DAP, thank you. Phosphate, no. There we go. What's this one? Zinc fertilizers. Oh, okay. Oh, copper, okay. Manganese. Boron, just use borax. You don't get boron fertilizers, use borax. Soil application of borax. 10 to 12 kilos per hectare. That's not very much, is it? Well, it's only one of the lowest nutrients available for secondary nutrients. Molybdenum, and that's the lowest. 1 part per billion needed in soils. That's mostly for nitrogen process. Chelated. You've heard about chelated. Well, that's to do with synthetics too. But you can get iron chelations. They're called cytophores. But chela is the Latin word for claw, which means locked. So it just like locks on and grabs other ones. What will say it there? No. Chelates are useful in micronutrient. Chelates useful in foliar. No good. EDTA is a chelation. You can buy that. Or DTPA. Fortified fertilizers, very good. Applications of judicious fertilizer for higher yields to avoid risk. No. Calculation of the quantity of fertilizers to be used. We're good to go through this. Well, problem 1. Well, you want me to? I don't usually go through the math stuff, but this is pretty important because it's good to know how much area you've got, and you can work it back to with your NPK of your different things that you're going to use for NPK, your organic sources, and then you can work out, use it. I did this with chook manure and found out that the big manufacturer in Australia, or the big major retailer of the, everyone gets all their building and gardening products from, starts with B, they have blended mixes. So it's not the, you can't go off a 5-1-2, no, what is it, 5-2-1 for chicken manure because it's blended. Because I did my calculations and I was getting nitrogen deficiency on the garlic. I thought, oh, great. So I'm not going to go through that. Here's the maths if you'd like to go through it and do the sums yourself. You can pause and we're still going to go through some carbon and nitrogen ratios, I remember. Yep, that's the end of this week. So I'll see if there's any questions, then we'll get on to the last question, which is this one. So are we just guessing, or are we trying to calculate carbon and nitrogen values, or is there an easy actual way at home? Righto, let's find that answer. Been going for an hour here. Carbon and nitrogen. Problems. Actually, where is it? I've got a, I know where it is. Carbon nitrogen. We'll go to organic farming class. Where's that? Organic farming for sustainable agriculture. I'm sure they're right at the start here. Water requirements. No, I'll show you what I'm looking at. I'll remove that. Yeah, no worries, Aussie Jeffrey. You're welcome, mate. I hope it helps. Let me know if you've got any questions. Just going to try and answer this carbon and nitrogen ratio composting question for genetic memory farms. Oh, here we go. So this is fantastic, actually. This is great. So good quality compost. It's got to be black and brown. Smell earthy. The smell name's called geosmin. Geosmin. pH has got to be 6.5 to 8. Carbon and nitrogen ratio is 10 to 20. Good temperature. Moisture level, this is important, 25 to 30%. So poor quality, smells bad, pH is whack. Carbon and nitrogen ratio is above or out of the 10 to 20 ratio. High temperature. Moisture is too dry or too wet. Carbon and nitrogen ratio. Here we go. So animal manure, oil, seed residues, fish manure, industrial waste, potato industry waste, etc., has a carbon and nitrogen ratio under 19. An ideal carbon and nitrogen ratio, because you want, it's, what is it, 1 to 24 is for microbes, but they say 1 to 25. So that's what you're aiming for. So here's in that range. So that's vegetables, food processing, pulses, oil seeds, tea, kitchen waste, excluding all your, I'm not going to go into that. If you're going to compost it, it'll be compost process, and it'll go up to the thermophilic stage, so it'll get rid of all the bad stuff. Biomass and green manures, they're perfect. The stuff you don't want, which is all the dry stuff. Brown stuff has a very high carbon ratio. Green is a high nitrogen ratio. There's different ways to process it. They've built these factories out of bamboo. So brilliant. Look at the one in the middle, 3-story, oh, 2-story bamboo it's built out of. These are brilliant. They've got so much ingenuity. I get taught the poor way to do it, which, you know, I'm poor, so I look for all these ways and methods. And I also get taught the ways where you can buy it. Like they teach you what things you can buy to make the same thing happen. Where I focus on the poor things, because we all haven't got much money these days. Worm propagation, no, not going into that. Here we go, the cop. So it's 60 to 80% of this is vermicompost, but you still want it. It's got to be high for the process to action to take place. It's not that moist. Put a micro sprinkler in, water it. Carbon to nitrogen ratios, nitrogen enrichment strategies. No. Let's go carbon to nitrogen ratios. Come on. Actually, if you're interested in this, I made a video on this. Go back and look at the video on the how to enrich vermicastings, and I summarise it all. It only goes for 10 or 15 minutes. Bacillus firmus, potassium, huh? Polymixer I use. Polymixer also does nitrogen. All right, CN ratios. I can't get off track. Take home message. I think there's something here about it. There it is. The water. Vermicompost. Conventional vermicompost and enriched. No. Carbon to nitrogen ratio. Come on. Now we're in pests. NPK. No. Growth regulators. I'll try and look for you for the carbon nitrogen ratio. Elaborate on that. Cultural. It's in the compost section. Has that got any there? No, it's just still talking about vermicastings. Now into the organic rating, the ORAC rating. There you go, your ORAC. Let's have a look somewhere else. Very interesting. Thank you, says Aussie Jeffro. For your time. You're welcome, Aussie Jeffro. I know, I'll put in. Here we go. Let's have a look at some of these. Here we go. I've got your question, GMF. I hope you're still there. And if you're not, you can watch this next time. Oh, it's not the one I want. This should be up. Share screen. So many clicks. So let's have a look at some of these. There's some of the detailed ones. ResearchGate is a good one. So carbon to nitrogen ratio is extremely important, so the right nutrients are left at the end that you want. The amount of carbon and nitrogen is there. But there you go. Look, I was saying before, the 24:1. It's perfect for soil microbes. Oh, wow. So there's a bit of a thing for you on the right. It's not getting bigger. So ideal microbial diet, which is the same as alfalfa or grass, barnyard manure. So pretty much if you go and put in, say, wheat straw or rye straw, but see, notice how it's all brown? It's all brown down to about here, 37. So anything above that's brown. So you can mix that with your heavy greens. Soil microbe has an 8:1, apparently, according to this. Young alfalfa hay, beef manure, legume hay. So you can even use dried legumes if you want to process it, where that's a bit of a hassle because you've got to process it. Where's the higher one? I've got one that's a lot higher. Actually, I'll just go to wood chips. This is the one I wanted. Let's go to this. I suppose I'll just download it. I've probably already got it because I remember seeing that figure. I'll put this in the chat later on. So all the brown stuff, wood chips, cardboard, sawdust, all, look at that, 7, like hundreds is to 1. So if your meals, poultry meal, blood meal, for instance, if you've got it all, alfalfa hay, so even this says 12:1, where the other one says alfalfa hay 13:1. Oh, close enough. It's just good to be accurate. Cow manure is only 15:1. So if you get your raw cow manure, you might want to add some newspaper or some, actually, you know, when adding newspaper into the ink has heaps of heavy metals, heaps. So that's why they try and say when you do your composting, you don't put anything with pictures or colors on it, because it's got all the heavy metals in it. And that takes bulk years to try and process. And more so, it might be retained and you might end up consuming it. So really, that's for organics. You want plain cardboard and plain newspaper. Well, it's hard to get plain newspaper, not colourful. Horse manure. There you go. I'll put that link so people can read that if they want to know about how it happens faster, and it happens faster when it's green, slower when it's brown. And if it happens faster, you're thinking, oh, cool. No, because they're going to use up all the nitrogen. There's too much nitrogen and there's not going to be enough retained afterwards. So if you did an NPK of your processed compost from doing it this way, faster, it's going to be lower. What else does it say down here? A balanced seed and, yeah, balanced carbon nitrogen ratio is what you want. Simplified approach. A farmer's experience. This is all good reading. Water infiltration and holding capacity. It's just ideal. Everything cycles well. That's the one that you want. Is that 24 or 25:1. So keep your grass, keep a paddock even just green, and keep mowing it, catching the grass and putting it in heaps. That'll break down with heat, and before you know it, you've got perfectly rad compost, green manure to add to your compost heap. So you get all your brown stuff, all your manures, and there's your blend. What a blend that would be. Oh, look, coffee grounds, 25:1. Horse manure. Problem with horses is that they give horses a lot of antibiotics and tranquilizers and steroids and all that sort of stuff, and that's got to go somewhere, and that goes into their urine and their manure, which is going to end up in your garden. So really, really be careful on your sources of all of these, of your inputs for your compost heap. That's why having your green grass, you know what's going on. It's your property, or even your neighbour's property. Imagine that. You start mowing your neighbour's property and you tell them, can I just mow your grass for you to keep your grass? I'll help you out. and they think you're doing a good thing, and you're really massively helping the earth. I don't need to go through any more. I think that's enough. Carbon to nitrogen ratios. What's this big one? Let's have a look at that. Biogas production. Avoid failure by using the correct carbon to nitrogen ratio. Yeah. All right, I'll put this one up too. These are sources that I haven't fact checked, so you should only just rely on them a little bit. Where this ResearchGate one, they've done studies on it to get to these analysis numbers. These ones here, I wouldn't have a clue where they got the numbers from. I just hope that they would be right, but they're good as a general rule of thumb, because you know they're not going to be too out. Like, look at that, algae has a 2 nitrogen ratio and a carbon to nitrogen ratio of 100. What's that mean? 100 of which? Well, sawdust is 200. Oh, so it's the first number. So it's got 50. 100. It should have a lot more. Anyway, so that's why these things, you have to take them on a grain of salt. But the other one, ResearchGate, I support. Oh, manures, pig nitrogen content, slaughter waste. There's human manure. What? I presume that's human manure. That's got to be urine, because the human manure wouldn't have I wouldn't think would have a 5 to 7 nitrogen rating. Could be wrong, no, I haven't tested it. Something I don't really play around with. The human manure, one gets organically composted. Well, that's it, I reckon. Dr. Tricome, you come right at the end, mate. Fair dinkum, right at the end. We've been chatting for an hour and a half, but it's nice to see you regardless. Did a pretty good organics speech today. Quite impressed with it, actually. It's anybody looking to get into it or to learn, yeah, it's the go. Didn't even talk about vermicastings, just organic manures is really today's topic. Yeah, we just got home. Oh, I hope you're safe, mate. Now to the snowy weather. It's very snowy where you are. And for people living indoors, like in apartment blocks or things like that, you can also do vermicastings. So you can compost inside and it's not going to smell bad. I've done this before. So you get a filing cabinet and put some totes in a filing cabinet and cycle them that way. Put a few drip holes in the bottom, drip it to the bottom and catch the bottom stuff, and it shouldn't leak anywhere. That works really well to compost everything. And you can guarantee probably out of a few totes, you might get a harvest. Like if you have a 3-layered filing cabinet, you cycle, so you use the top one for 60 days and then let it cycle for 60 days. And then you start on the second level and use that one. And then you go and harvest the top one after 60 days, after it's been processed, and then start again. So it's a good indoor thing, and it should smell like geosmin, which is the smell of good earth. If it smells anaerobic, that means there's too much water and you've got to put holes in the bottom. And I made that mistake as well. So it can't retain too much water. And you can even use a leak jet down the bottom for feeds and for nutrient teas. But yeah, that's about it. Organics, manures was today's excellent topic. Oh, and let's get your questions in now. Or stream's going to end soon. I'll just go and we can have a sneak peek on next week while people get their questions or statements in, have their last chance for a bit of a say. Next week, what's happened next week? Well, let's finish this course off. How's today's organic manures, manufacturing, properties and fate of NPK and micronutrient fertilizers. So I'll put some of that in the summary heading. Next week is slow release fertilizers and bio fertilizers. Look at this. You know how I talk about microbes as my thing. Next week it's on. Slow release fertilizer. Remember I told you today it's just only really to do the size of it. and how compact it might be. You put it through and process it. That's next week. Wacky do. Still got a few weeks to go on the course too. Oh, and then the following week 10 is biofertilizer, biochar, yield, mulching, and then a urea. Mulching. This is where it would be GMF. Good, so we're going to cover it. That's where it's going to be, the carbon to nitrogen ratio in mulching. This course was only written in 2022 or 2021. So you can really rely on the information. That's next week's slow release fertilizer bioferts. Will do. Good on you, Aussie Jeffro. I hope everything's going well. Thanks for your nice words, mate. And yes, I'll see you all next week too. 1.5 hours. See, you get that microbe into it, and I just get excited. Microbes just work so well. Not even just for agriculture. They just work so well. You know, Bacillus subtilis, that's very rampant through agriculture. It's good for human bodies. Yeah, interesting. All right, I'll talk more about microbes next week, because otherwise I'll keep talking. They're just blooming rad. Fancy getting fertilizer out of microbes. You don't have to buy it. You can just use these nitrogen fixing ones, and they pull it out of the air. Free. Just free. And then they multiply for you for free. That's coming up. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thank you for listening. Happy breeding, happy growing, and good health to you all. See you next week. Bye-bye.